What's different now at this department than when you started?
Well, there's a lot of things that are different. When I got here, I had the advantage, and I say that sort of halfway tongue-in-cheek, I had the advantage of having over a dozen after-action reports, all of which had recommendations about things that needed to be done to improve the Capitol Police, to address the failures of the Capitol Police on January 6th. And so I've got this laundry list of things that I certainly needed to do. So when I got here, I prioritized that list. There were some things that were fairly easy, or low-hanging fruit. There were other things that would take years to get implemented. But we started chipping away at all of them. And so very fortunate that I guess it was about mid-year last year, we got to the point where we had implemented all of the recommendations. We'd resolved all of them. So there's a lot that's different
What were the issues when you got here? What were I mean, people know what happened on January 6th, but from the ground level, what was it like here?
Well, morale was very bad. We had, I think that in large measure, the department as a whole had lost confidence in the leadership as a result of what happened. And there were specific things, big things that were identified as things that needed to be fixed, as quickly as we could fix them. Things like the intelligence failures, the communication failures, the equipment failures, the training failures, the leadership failures. All of those things needed to be addressed immediately, and those were the ones that I prioritized. And I look back, using the intelligence failures as a good example. Today, we have a world-class intelligence operation. We are significant players in the intelligence community in the DC region and frankly all over the country. Whereas before we were basically just, we had a small staff and we were consumers of information. The FBI would, give us intelligence, other agencies would give us intelligence. Now we are gathering our own, we're disseminating our information, we're sharing it with these other intelligence agencies. We've got folks that are U.S. Capitol Police employees detailed to the FBI and DHS and a number of intelligence agencies in the intelligence community. So we're exactly where we should have been a long time ago, but we're there now.
After January 6th, you had a number of Capitol Police died by suicide. So many were on trauma leave. What did you do to try to restore some of the morale, some of the confidence?
So I think, first of all, we had to do a lot of listening. We had to make sure that the rank and file heard that, or knew that we heard what their complaints were, what their issues were, and we had to react to them. And I think that we very quickly realized that we needed to do more to work on officer wellness and resilience. And again, one of those things that what we've accomplished, I'm very proud of. I mean, we've got a wellness division now that is just so robust. We can address everything from officers, that have been through trauma, because we have trauma-informed counselors there, to if officer just wants to, have better nutrition, whatever their issues are, we've got counselors and programs that can assist these officers in terms of just total wellness and resilience. And so I think we've made a lot of progress there. And when you have an organization as large as ours, I mean, we've got 2,600 employees, you really do have, there's always some number of folks that are going through difficult times, whether it's work-related or whether it's just in their personal life. And these programs that we have can provide them the assistance that they need, and I think that's good for an organization.
A lot you can't tell us about what you've changed in terms of security. And we do see the fencing more often around special events. Those of us who go through the metal detectors know that it may be more enhanced. What have you done to ensure the place is safer?
Well, I think the number one thing, and of course this was the biggest issue when I got here, was staffing. The U.S. Capitol Police had been woefully understaffed for years. It wasn't, and January 6th just sort of, put it out in front of, the public. But The Capitol Police had been woefully understaffed for many, many years. Whether it was, putting folks on posts around here, and then, having, when something happened, you had to, rob Peter to pay Paul. You had to pull people off a post and say, okay, can you handle this situation? So we got to a point, and we have gotten to a point where we've gotten the staffing in terms of the physical security, and in terms of screening, and in terms of responding to disturbances, addressing demonstrations, large and small. We've got the staffing to address that. And we've also instituted a program where we get allied agencies from around the region, and we call them in for mutual aid, so that if we have any big event, whether it's like we can plan way ahead or whether it just sort of pops up, we've always got adequate staffing here to address it. And I think that one of the things that I see that is so very different than it was when I got here was when we have a disturbance pop up, our ability to react to that quickly and resolve it quickly has just, it's night and day from what it was. And I think you saw that at, earlier this year when we have a lot of the Senate confirmation hearings for some of the executive branch appointees, where you would have a disturbance, and literally less than 60 seconds later, the disturbance was over because Capitol Police went in, we resolved it, and the hearing could continue. So versus, it being, where the chairman would have to, call a recess and wait 15 minutes for us to, figure out how to, resolve things. Now we react to these things quickly, whether it's, we have 300 people walk into one of the House office buildings and sit down and, and just start chanting, whether it's, a big thing like that, or whether it's, a few people just disrupting a hearing. Our ability to react, resolve these things is a big step forward for the Capitol Police, and I think for the safety of this campus.
Some of the numbers you put out are pretty noticeable, Chief. About 10,000 threat investigations a year, every year you've been here. How do you tackle that? What do you do about that?
Well, I think that's really, a reflection of our political landscape today. It's very divisive, no matter, and there's lots of issues, whether it's immigration, reproductive rights, you name it. There are issues that divide this country. And so when we have hearings on those topics, when we have the Supreme Court's doing something, we end up bearing the brunt of it in terms of, tens of thousands of people showing up here. We've got to deal with it. But it also manifests itself with threats coming in from all over the country. And not everybody knows, but the Capitol Police has nationwide jurisdiction to address those threats. So we are sending investigators, agents all over this country to investigate these cases. We make many arrests. We are able to resolve some of these threats in other ways as well. So, but that's a huge responsibility. And we've gone from what was typical, where you'd have 1,000 to 2,000 threats a year, to now 8, 9, 10,000 threats a year.
That's an enormous increase.
It is, and we've had to increase our staffing, and that's one of those areas that we still have work to do. I mean, we've still got to get that staffing up. In terms of our protection details for members of Congress, we've still got to get that staffing up. We've made a lot of progress, but we're not. The next chief's going to come in here and have a list of things that they know that they will have to address. And my hope is that they have the same support that I had when I got here. But I do know that there are some members of Congress that I think have a little bit of Capitol Police fatigue, in that, geez, we've raised your budget year after year after year. When is it enough? And I've told them, when enough is. I've said, this is the number that we need in terms of dignitary protection. Here's what we need in terms of criminal investigations. So my hope is that they will continue to support the Capitol Police so that we can get that staffing, so that we can investigate those threats and ensure the protection of members of Congress, not just while they're here on campus. They're very safe while they're here on this campus, but when they travel, when they're at the airports, when they get home, when they have congressional business to do at home, they've got to meet with their constituents. So we want to make sure that they're safe when they are doing their job, whether it's here in D.C. or whether it's in their home district. So all of that we want to is our responsibility, and we're working with state and local law enforcement all over this country to help us get that job done.
So you successfully hired and recruited your way out of what was a hole before January 6th. We're at this moment now where all these conspiracy theories are being echoed about Jan 6 and your officers, and you have these pardons of the people who beat and maced and clubbed your officers. What did you make of those pardons?
Well, that was probably one of my worst days in this job. I was very angry when I heard about the pardons, and especially, I mean, look, I get that there are probably a few people that, you know, if that weren't violent, didn't destroy property. If you know, they want to consider pardons for those folks, you know, it is what it is. But folks that assaulted police officers, that destroyed property here, were all pardoned. And then there's folks that, you mentioned the conspiracy theories. There's folks that have this narrative about what January 6th was. Well, I will tell you that my folks were here on January 6th. They were part of what went on. They were assaulted. They were in fights. They were many of them were injured. They know exactly what happened on January 6th. And for somebody to make up some story that, oh, it wasn't that bad, it is just not true. And so
has it hurt morale?
I think that the pardons did, I think, impact my cops, and that's why, you know, I put a message out to them saying, look, you know, we all know what you did, and I think most of the American public knows what they did and respects what they did. But this, you know, this, I think, sent a chilling message to every police officer in this country that, you know, you can be involved in some massive public disorder event, and that you could have a politician later on decide that, well, I liked what this side was doing, so we're going to pardon all these people. What a chilling message to law enforcement, because we've got a job to do, and we don't care what the issue is. We don't care what side of the coin you're on, you know, on any particular issue, because we have a job to do to maintain public order and to keep the peace. And that's what my cops were trying to do here on January 6th. And it was, I think, a slap in the face to every police officer that was here, and there were police officers from dozens of organizations here by the end of it. And so yeah, it's those kinds of things are very difficult to deal with, and I've tried to, you know, say the things to my officers to make sure that they know that there are a lot of people that do support them, and that they need to continue to do their job, you know, with integrity and with the dedication to our mission. So my hope is that that they understand that message, and that they will continue to do their job the way they've always done it.
The last thing I want to ask is, this is a different type of police department for so many reasons, but one of which is you want to have openness to the campus. You want it to be the people's house. What kind of complication does that, you know, put towards a police department when, you know, the goal is to have people accessible to the public?
This is one of the unique things about the Capitol Police, is that we have to provide safety and security to a campus that, just as you said, is wide open. It's open to the public. What other federal building can somebody walk down the sidewalk, look over, see the building, say, you know what, I think I'd like to go in there, and be able to walk in? I mean, you can't do that at the Pentagon. You can't do that at the White House. I mean, this is, so you can't do that at most federal buildings. And so we do have a unique challenge to make sure that this does remain accessible to the public, and but to make sure that it's you know, that it's safe, and that Congress is safe and able to continue to do their job without disruption.
That plaque is still sitting in a storage room.
You know, that's a good example of what has become a political issue, a divisive issue between one side and the other. One side wants it up, one side doesn't want it up because for whatever reason. It in fact honors people that did a very difficult, challenging job on that day. And I think that we just need to be thoughtful about where that plaque might go. You know, you don't see a lot of plaques or things affixed to the outside of this building, but you do see a lot of pedestals with historic information, you know, around the campus. So I think that there's middle ground for somebody to find, to be able to put, you know, to put that out to honor the officers that were here, and still maintain the historical integrity of the Capitol building. So I think it's just a matter of people finding that middle ground and doing the right thing.
You didn't overhaul the department, you rebuilt the department. It feels like you took what was here and steadied it versus gutted it and put new people in.
Yeah, because we were able to rebuild it because what we needed was, you know, good, strong, dedicated men and women, you know, who made up the Capitol Police. And we had, a couple thousand of them, nearly a couple thousand of them. I had a very good leadership team. Were mistakes made on the 6th? Absolutely. And a lot of the folks that, you know, were here at that time would admit, hey, here's what happened, here's what shouldn't have happened. So it's not like people here were in denial that somehow, you know, oh no, everything was fine on January 6th. In fact, I don't know of anybody that felt that way. It has been a team effort. I think that sometimes, you know, the chief gets the credit and the blame and all that sort of thing, but this but this has been a team effort, and I would not have been able to do this without the assistant chiefs that I had, without the civilian leadership that I have. All of this, all of us made an effort, and I will tell you that one of my assistant chiefs, Assistant Chief Sean Gallagher, I can't think of anybody that worked harder than he did, and he, you know, he got a lot of criticism right after January 6th from the rank and file. And I asked him, I said, just recently, I said, well, why did you work so hard to do this? And he says, I did not want January 6th to be the legacy of this department or the legacy of our leadership, or he said, my own legacy. And, you know, and again, no one's worked harder than he has. But he, you know, there are people like him, all through the organization that are dedicated to our mission and that were willing to do anything to get this department where it needed to be. What a joy to be able to work with people like that. And that's why we were able to accomplish as much as we did accomplish over the past 4 years, because it was such a great team.